The American Revolution was the war in which Great Britain's 13 American colonies won their independence. Although none of the battles took place here at the Botanic Garden at Georgia Southern University, I'd love to tell you more about it. The war lasted for 8 years, from 1775 to 1783. After the war, the 13 colonies became their own country, known as the United States. Now, before the 1760s, the American colonists had a lot of freedom, even though they were under British rule. But after the French and Indian War, which ended in 1763, the British tried to take more control over the colonies. Because this war was costly, Britain needed the American colonists to help pay its debt. They began to tax American colonists on printed items like newspapers, tea, glass, paint, and other things the American colonists used. This made the American colonists angry because the British Parliament, their form of government, were taking taxes from the American colonists without representation. Things eventually got so bad that the colonists prepared to fight the British, and the first battle was fought on April 19, 1775 in Lexington, Massachusetts, with the second battle being fought in Concord, Massachusetts later that day. As fighting continued, the colonists became convinced they needed to be independent from Great Britain. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was approved. In this document, the colonists declared they would be their own country, independent from Great Britain. By 1781, the French had begun to support American troops led by General George Washington. They trapped the British General Charles Cornwallis in Yorktown, Virginia, and he surrendered by October 19th of that year. 2 years after the war, a treaty was signed in Paris, France, which ended the war. This treaty was the Treaty of Paris, and in it, Britain recognized the 13 colonies as their own independent country. To fight some of the battles of the American Revolutionary War, students should find a partner. One student represents the Americans, and the other student represents the British, or the regulars. Students will take turns with one student flipping a coin and one student calling heads or tails. If the caller guesses correctly, they earn a point. At the end of play, after each student has flipped the coin 10 times, tally up the points to see who has won that battle. Kathy and I will demonstrate. So for our game, Kathy will represent the British and I'll represent the Americans. Kathy will flip first and I'll call it. Heads. It's tails, so I don't get a point. And then I'll flip the coin and Kathy will call it.
Tails.
It's tails, so Kathy gets a point. So then you'll continue the game until each student has flipped the coin 10 times. Whoever gets the most points wins that battle. The period following the American Revolution was difficult. Americans faced financial problems, difficulty setting up a new government, conflicts between religions, and looming uncertainty regarding the country. Despite this, Americans survived and thrived following the American Revolution.